12,000 contributions. What did you think when you first started watching them?
Do you mind? Firstly, can I just say thank you to everyone who's made the journey here and who contributed to this film. I mean, it's you know, quite overwhelming for me to meet you all in person, having watched your footage. And can I apologise to anyone who expected to see more of their footage than they did? But I hope you can understand that with such an enormous amount of contributions, it's very difficult to create something that encompasses all of those in their, well, certainly in their entirety. But I hope that you can see that collectively it amounts to something which, for me, feels very powerful and wonderful and quite beautiful. And hopefully you all feel part of that, even if your contribution to it was relatively small. So thank you again for turning up and for submitting your footage. And then yes, with that number of contributions, it's very challenging. And you know, I personally watched, I mean, certainly everybody's footage who's in this room, and many more contributions beyond that. I think personally 250 hours that I watched myself. And beyond that, there were many hundreds more hours, which were watched by a team of people. We had 12 people who were going through all of the footage that was sent in. And every day we would come in and we would look at some of the examples of clips that they had found, and they would project them up on the wall, and we would watch those and talk about them, and talk about how we might be able to include them in the film, and how essentially how I would, I mean, it sounds crude, but rate them in a way, because you know, we had to find a way of whittling down all of this material, and then hopefully the people who were watching that footage, who were filtering it, if you like, were able to consider things in the same way that I would, and that meant that we ended up with a pool, like I say, of about 250 hours, and all of the footage, everyone who's in that room was in that 250 hours, and from that we crafted the film.
And what were you looking for when you're sitting there and something leaps out at you? How does it leap out?
It's very difficult to actually define the qualities of footage that kind of make you appreciate it in a way that means that it gets included. And the ingredients for the footage are very hard to pin down. And it's not necessarily the quality of the footage or the beauty of it, although we did receive some very beautiful and very wonderfully shot images, and I've recognised a few of you in the audience who shot that material. But sometimes the quality is provided by the fact that it is quite rough and ready, and the sound is quite rough, and the image is quite rough. But it gives it a certain intimacy and a certain quality, which is very hard to achieve if you're filming as a crew, as I often have done before. Or even in the way that people film things now, whether in Big Brother style with fixed cameras in people's homes, etc. It's very hard to achieve that intimacy, that point of view that somebody filming with their own camera, whether it's something quite fancy or whether it's a mobile phone, in their own home or in their own surroundings. So the ingredients, the qualities which make a piece of footage stand out to you are yes, quite hard to pin down. But I would say that every clip that we've used, and more beyond that, spoke to me in a different way and either moved me or said something quite profound or something quite beautiful, or allowed us to get from A to B, or became part of a wider theme. And as I'm sure you'll recognise, there are several themes which are coming through in this film, and that people were sharing. So they're quite collective experiences in a way, and they're themes and experiences that I recognise through my own life and experience and the people around me. So we were very keen to draw those experiences together into something that felt like a collective.
And did you start with a sense of the shape that you were going to give it and looked for stuff that fitted that shape, or did the shape coalesce?
No, I mean, as you can probably tell, we structured the film loosely, chronologically, through not to the point where we were really scrutinising at what point in the day things happen, but we gave it that rough structure. And that's, I think, partly because all of the material was shot in the day, and so it's a natural form to take. And obviously, if you've seen Life in a Day, many of you have a wonderful film and a very good example for us. It also followed that structure, that chronological structure, although I think it started at about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning rather than midnight where we start.
Okay. Jack, can I ask you a bit more about the practicalities of how it all happened? You're co-producer who worked at Scott Free, the company who made the original Life in a Day. Just the practical challenge, how did you do it? How did you amass all this footage and start filtering it?
Well, it's like making the film. You can divide it into 2 phases. So one is a kind of marketing phase, and that was really learning. And BBC, Charlotte in documentary commissioning, kind of drove this amazing campaign to get the word out as widely as possible. And the film success is a function of how many people participate or are inspired by the idea. So Morgan's videos are really important in terms of maybe setting a tone for the film, which I think is reflected in the finish. It's quite a sort of profound endeavour, and it was really important because people don't expect material that you kind of upload via YouTube to be kind of as sort of serious as that. So it was, in my view, a very, very successful campaign to get as many people as possible involved. And then you're into a kind of very irregular filmmaking process where it's an incredibly brave decision for a director to take on a project like this, because you have no control over the material you're going to get, and you're kind of, your film, as far as it's Morgan's film, and is as good as the material that the filmmakers provide. So we get from YouTube drives and drives of these files, and some of you send stuff directly, and it goes into this crazy database that we've built that enables everyone to access everything, and it sort of goes through this process. And there are lots of, they're quite tedious, but I find it quite interesting phases in terms of there are, I think, over 150 different frame rates that have to be kind of harmonised. There's, as Morgan says, huge variance in quality. Clearing stuff is a nightmare. Thank you very much, everyone who put up with all those relentless emails back and forth and forms to sign and so on. So, but as I guess you get close to the end, it becomes closer to a more conventional film. So, we had an orchestra and everything, and there's a normal sound mix, yada yada yada, and then we have film at the end.
And what did you think when we hit 12,000? Was there a point early on where you thought no one's going to send anything in?
Yeah, it's absolutely terrifying. We were really, really worried, because you just don't know whether people are going to respond to it. It was November, maybe people would just be pottering around at home and not really wanting to get out and do stuff. So it was very, very exciting, and we nearly, I think we between doubled or tripled the amount we got from the UK from Life in a Day, for Britain in a Day, and that was all thanks to the BBC's kind of huge marketing campaign.
Abigail, can I ask you, what you commission programmes that are there to help make people learn? What was it that appealed to you about this in the first place?
Well, I think there are so many layers of learning in a project like this, but one of the key things for us is we're very interested in helping people develop digital skills of different kinds, and as soon as Charlotte Moore talked to me about this project, I saw that it was an amazing opportunity to inspire people to learn more about storytelling in film. And as Jack said, we ran a nationwide campaign because we wanted to encourage all sorts of people to take part. So we held workshops with people who had never thought of filming before, to teach them some of the basic skills of storytelling, and actually some of the basics of how to upload onto YouTube, which, if you've not done it, is to be learnt and had its own challenges. And we produced some with working with Scott Free. We produced some films, some guidance on how to film. So there was many layers of learning around storytelling and using a camera. And what I hope is that actually some of that there'll be a sort of ripple effect, because amazing to contribute to this project, but also that some of the learning and inspiration will actually apply in other areas, because so many of us carry around the ability to make a film now, that it seemed to be a wonderful opportunity just to give people a few more skills around that.
Now the film transmits on the BBC on the 11th of June. Is that the end of it, or will there be more life from this project? Is there a legacy, I suppose, to use a pompous word?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the beginning of the the next part of this project, because at the same time that the film transmits on television, we're going to launch the Britain in a Day archive, and that's going to grow over the next few months. But the first stage will, when the film goes out, will be that all the source films, so the films that you made, will be available online and will be trailing from the television, so that people can then go, inspired by the film I helped, to go and explore, because so many of you had much longer stories, obviously, that there'll be a chance for the audience to go and see your stories. And then through the summer we're working with around 26 universities now, working with the students to re-look again at all those films that submitted, and then we'll be releasing them. We're doing it in regional batches, so onto the archive, and it'll be a chance to... When you submitted your film, you remember there was a chance to tag against certain themes. Well, we've built the archive so that you'll be able to go back and search through the archive along those themes, so you can search regionally. So it'll be a real chance, a very interactive archive. I think it'll be a chance for people to actually create their own Britain in a Day, because there'll be a facility to create your own playlist, to pick out the films that particularly speak to you. So I hope that this will have a very long life and will be an absolutely extraordinary record and insight of what it means to be living in Britain today.
Okay, what I'd like to do is just hear from people here in the audience. Comments, questions, opinions. You've got 3 people behind the final making of this. We've got dozens of people out there who are at the first stage. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love questions. We've got one at the back.
I'd just like to know...
There's a microphone on its way to you, so you won't have to shout back at you.
Good evening. I would just like to know how you decided on the 12th of November of all the dates.
Hello, Mr. Fish and Chips Man. As I know you, I would have liked to have included more of your footage, including the trip to the supermarket as well, and also the guided tour of York and the Kit Kat factory as well. And I genuinely mean that. We did have more of your footage in the film at the longer cut stage. Sorry, the question was the 12th of November. Yes, it's not chosen for any particular reason, other than it took the BBC and Scott Free and YouTube, etc., some time to sort out the practicalities of making the film. And that meant that the date kind of got bumped into, I suppose, winter. I would have perhaps preferred, well, I'm very glad with the results we had, but beforehand I was thinking, oh no, it's going to be a horrible grey day and rainy and nobody's going to be out filming, and there's hardly any daylight on the 12th of November, only about 8 hours. But as it turned out, it was a very nice day and lots of sunshine, but it wasn't chosen for any particular reason, but I think that that's part of the reason, in a way, for choosing it, because it's just an ordinary day.
Well, first of all, I'd like to congratulate you, because I can say that is one of the most inspiring and moving pieces of television film I've ever seen. So, yeah, I cried a lot. My question, one of the most difficult things as a programme maker is music selection, and that's something that you had absolutely spot on. Was that something you had in mind before, or did you sculpt the music around the images?
And I'm sorry, I don't recognise you, so...
Oh no, I work at the BBC,
oh.
so...
That's why. I don't go there very often. Yes, it's enormously integral, as you can tell, to the film. And the composer, Martin Phipps, is a very talented man. And we spent a lot of time creating the tailoring, if you like, the music to the pictures, and the orchestration and the recording of that. It was done with a full orchestra and with a choir at Air Studios. So we kind of went to town, if you like, on the production of the music, because it's so important to creating the mood of the film. In terms of the editing process, because you need you need music to edit to. Sometimes you're editing to temp or temporary tracks, and then the composer will come in and create something that is not similar to the temp, but creates the same sort of feeling, if you like. So sometimes he's composing after, towards the end of the process, if you like, but that means that he's working with scenes which are already quite fine cut in a way. So he really knows what the kind of mood and essence of those are, and is able to score to picture, if that makes sense.
Another question over here somewhere. Question for me. Hopefully, it'll be on YouTube in January all over the world, so they'll for free. But there may be television interest before that. Particularly, I think we think now, because the eyes of the world are on the UK. So I mean, the dream is for as many people as possible across the world to see it. Because I think it is very. I mean, I find it fascinating as a native, but I think if you, as a window into Britain, it's probably quite extraordinary. I think.
Yeah, of course. Congratulations again. It was absolutely terrific. And for everyone I recognised in here.
And I recognise you as well, so
thank you.
Thank you for your contribution as well.
Thank you.
And I believe that we put you to some lengths to get release forms and things like that from Australia, so
yeah,
that's very much appreciated.
No problem at all. No, I mean, I was wondering, there were some narratives in there that really stood out for me. The disabled girl, obviously the Scottish lad looking for his mum, and the dying father. But there were some bigger narratives, like the London camp and stuff like that. How much were you conscious that you were responsible for how that looked, or did it write itself for you?
Responsible in terms of how much we included, or the representation of those events?
Yeah.
Well, I think you face those situations all the time as a documentary maker, and whether it's footage that I've shot personally, or whether it's other people's footage, or whether it's archive, those are kinds of decisions that you're making, that you are ultimately responsible for the way whatever it is that you're making a film about is represented. So, I suppose I mean, it is seeing it to a certain extent through my eyes, but I try to do that fairly and objectively, and mostly without an agenda, but that's not to say that it's that there isn't any kind of meaning to be found in that either, because obviously all the choices made are very that they are choices that are made, and they're very deliberate. So yes, there is, I hope, meaning to be found in those choices, but not necessarily kind of overtly or pushing people in a direction or misrepresenting people, because I wouldn't want to do that either.
No, absolutely. It was eye-opening. Thank you.
Hi. First, I'd love to say I loved it. It was such a great film. I'd like to ask, as an aspiring director myself, I wanted to know, in your eyes, what was the single biggest challenge in this project, and also, do you have any sort of tips for, again, aspiring directors such as myself who are approaching their own projects? What sort of advice would you give?
It's difficult to answer in a way, but I would say that, I mean, it was an absolute pleasure to make this film, and I really genuinely enjoyed the process. So, I think you need to find subjects that mean something to you, and find something that you enjoy and that you're passionate about, and make a film about it if you can. And I think now that we have this the technology available to us, the means available to us, to do that relatively cheaply, although this actually wasn't a cheap film to make, but I think that we all have those capabilities, and having seen the work of many of the people in the audience, the talent as well, to do that. And there were 1,000 short films, individual short films, that could have been made out of the footage that we received. So I would just encourage the people who made those, or people who have those aspirations like yourself, to make those films, but choose something that is very personal to you, that perhaps only you are able to make in a way, an insight that you have, or access that you have to a situation which is difficult perhaps for other people to achieve.
I was just wondering if there was going to be an actual physical copy of the film that we could have, so not only everyone can see it in the world now, but future generations can see it and available to see it, because that would be great.
Yes, we haven't got around to that yet, but yes, there should be. It'll, I mean, in addition, in terms of, I mean, we should do that, but there's, in terms of future generations, I like the idea of being on YouTube forever. But yeah.
What impact do you reckon it would have on the next generation? So like my children and me, my budgie, and the film's just about to have babies, so yeah. He's the one that's asleep.
I recognise you from being asleep.
Yeah.
Is the budgie under your beret?
You want to show to the budgie, that's why you want DVD.
So it's very beautifully shot, by the way, that.
I'm actually
yes.
an aspiring director as well, so.
Very nice. Was it 5D, Canon, something like that?
It was a Nikon D3 100, but I've got a 4D now, so.
Well, that was very nice.
I think it'll have. I think people will be completely find it jaw dropping, because I find it amazing. I find it incredibly illuminating to watch it now, and I guess I'm mad about things like 7-Up, and when you come back, things change so quickly that
the phone footage will be seen as so vintage.
That's right.
Yeah, it would be amazing.
Yeah,
yeah. Oh my god.
Yeah.
First of all, many congratulations. I think it was brilliant. I love the timeline from wee small hours back to wee small hours. I love lots of the juxtapositions, and I think it's an absolute triumph. Well done. But what I want to ask is, do you think it was particularly British, or do you think, had it not been called Britain in a Day, do you think it could have been shot in France, Italy, Greece? Do you think if you did the same project, you would end up with sort of possibly the same film, or is Britain in a Day peculiar to Britain?
I hope it's peculiar to Britain, and I think that you could clearly make this film in any country around the world, but I imagine that you would make a very different film in each country, and that's perhaps what's one of the things that's interesting about it. And I believe Scott Free are going to be making other films in other countries, like doing Japan in a Day currently, and possibly a few more. And but Japan in a Day, I know that they're filming that, they've already filmed that on the anniversary of the tsunami. So that would be a film that I imagine that event will have a significant prominence in the film. So you can imagine that each film is going to, in some way, capture the culture. And I hope that this film does that, but in terms of our British culture, but captures it in all of its eclectic, and wonderful and eccentric and endearing form. And I think for me there's a sort of familiarity in what I'm seeing, which represents us in a way. It feels familiar to me. Everybody in the film feels like people I know, or I've met, or my family, or my friends, and there's something about that which feels that hopefully that it captures an identity, if you like. It captures our identity to a certain extent, as much as maybe a film can. And I'm sure for some people maybe it doesn't feel like it represents them, but to me I genuinely hope that it does represent us.
When I was reviewing my footage to send to you, I hadn't realised I'd spoken so much, and quite a bit was confessional.
And you had a couple of cameras on the go as well,
yeah,
I
got very great. But I thought...
A two-camera shoot, I was quite impressed. On your doorstep as well.
I panicked.
I was grateful for it, although we didn't use both cameras.
No.
But
I wondered, it was confessional. I just gobbled any of the garbage that came out of my mouth. When I reviewed it, I thought, do I really want people to hear this? Because it was basically about me dying, And but did you have anybody refuse after they sent you the footage? Did people say no, thank you, too good one?
Well, what did we do? Well, there was a man getting in a shower naked who'd shot it from a perhaps unflattering angle. that decided that it maybe wasn't the best idea to send that in to us. But that never made it in the first. Well, it never made it beyond the sort of rough cut stage. And I think there were a couple of question marks over clips. But I think the fact that people had obviously thought about it in advance, filmed it on the day, had a bit of time after that to think about whether they were going to send it in or not. They had to tick lots of boxes, sign forms, and go through the process of uploading, which was sometimes a bit arduous, as I understand it. So there were sort of plenty, I suppose, of stages along the way where people could have decided against sending their footage to us, and thankfully, well, I won't know the people who decided not to, but thankfully lots of people did, and thankfully you did as well. But I suppose, if somebody had really objected for whatever reason to the footage being included, that would be something that I would have to consider, because in a normal film that I would make, which when I film with people, myself, if there are any, we tend to show people the film before it goes out, and if there are any major objections, we try to sort those out. So, I would hope that would apply to this, but essentially it's on such a big scale, it's quite hard to do that, as in you can't show the film to everybody in advance and all of that sort of thing. But no, we didn't get many people saying, please can you not include that? I've changed my mind.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One last question.
Hey, once again, obviously it was brilliant, really loved it and everything. And I was just thinking, like, literally everyone that you've talked to here, you've mentioned, like, you've recognised them.
Including you.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
And your teenage friend who isn't here.
Yeah, unfortunately. It's just my dad. And,
unfortunately. He doesn't mean it.
No, I wanted you in. Anyway, sorry. And basically what I thought was just, how close did you get to each clip? Because you say you watched them for so long.
Yes.
And you must have seen God knows how much footage that didn't make it in the final cut, like him going to the supermarket and everything. And I was just thinking, like, did you really feel that during it, like a real connection with the people in the clip? Like, how close did you get to it?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think it was a privilege to have that insight and to share those, and for people to share those moments with me. And there are lots of people as well that I recognise in the audience whose footage that I watched quite a lot of, like you two up there. Yes, you two. And that we only used obviously a very small shot, spraying your armpits, and
my favourite shot.
But because I watched all of your footage, I listened to what you were saying, and I know your situation. I think that partly just because that spoke to me in a way, although we weren't able to include that story, in a way, the story of your day and what's happening in your lives. I think just I wanted to get something of what you'd shot into the film. So that's partly why that appears, that shot. So yes, I think the answer is I do feel that you, as much as you can, get to know people through a very small amount of footage that represents a very small part of their lives. And equally with your footage and your friend, and I think I mentioned to you earlier when I saw you up there for a drink, that we were left filling in the gaps and wondering sort of what the situation was there, and whether you were together or whether you had been together or whether you were still together, and those kinds of things. And that's also what I like about the film and the footage and the clips that we've used, is that sometimes there are questions that are left unanswered, and that's okay. We don't need to tell the whole story, but the film itself forms the whole story. But there are lots of kind of vignettes within there which leave you asking questions and interesting questions. I hope.
Did you notice? I've never seen James's clip. That's the first time we've seen it. Did you notice that possibly a precursor of what was to come? But that bit, typical teenagers when she's going, "I love you," and he goes, "I love you too."
No, absolutely. I mean, there were lots of moments in that clip which made it stand out. But I think that there was something quite familiar about that. And again, there's a running theme through all of this, which is familiarity, and that those kind of experiences of teenage relationships, if you like, were brought back to me through watching that clip, and the intensity of those relationships, and the difficulty sometimes, but also the beauty of them. And there was again a very lovely moment in this lovely surroundings in the woods, at a very nice time of day with lovely orange light and a sunset, and so all of these things kind of add up to it being a clip which meant something to me, and that I hope would mean something to other people, because ultimately that's what I'm hoping, is the things that mean something to me also mean something to the people who watch them.
I think it tells you what a great film this is, that we've managed to have such a great conversation about it. We could talk all night about it. Sadly, they've got another film they need showing here. It won't be as good as this one, I'm sure. One more thing you could all do for us and do for the film. It airs on the BBC on June the 11th. Tell everybody it's coming. Tell your friends. Phone up your local paper. Get them to write a story about it. I mean, it's such a brilliant piece of work. We want millions of people watching it. That's how it will have its big impact. So that would be a real favour you could do us. So really, all it remains for me to do is to thank everyone, to thank Abigail, to thank Jack, thank Morgan, but most of all, of course, to thank all of you, because this is your film. Those of you who've contributed it, you've made it, you own it. And I'd like to finally end just by making you all give yourselves one last round of applause. Thank you very much.
Oh yeah.